Okay, hi. Here we are again. And yeah, I sort of, you know, was thinking about the video I made the other day about my top five trickiest, stickiest substances, okay? And it kind of got me thinking, I really hate being the harbinger of doom, okay? I always have done, right? However, having said that, I was actually chatting to a friend yesterday, and we both kind of came to the same place, which was, when you really and truly wake up, and awaken to sort of what's been going on for the last couple of thousand years, it's unfortunate, and unfortunately, we all have to sort of go through the horror, if you like, of the truth of how we've been deceived. Okay, so we all have to go through that, and I feel for anyone who is going through it now because it's not necessarily an easy journey. However, it's one that we all actually have to undertake. And so there is no ascension without realization. And realization means that sometimes you unearth secrets, okay? And secrets have been hidden because they make people feel uncomfortable to be out in the open. So part of that very, very much has to do with what and when and how much of stuff we put into our bodies, okay? So, I went through that a couple of days ago and sort of said, naughty, naughty, shame on you. These are the things you really got to eliminate, okay? But I didn't really, just because, try to keep these videos short if possible. And so I didn't really go into kind of how you can improve on those substances. Okay, so I thought what I'm going to do is start from the end of that list, and then we're going to kind of go through and give you some ideas of how you can supplement and still have a really enjoyable and pleasurable oral experience. Okay. So the first one, because it was the last one that we touched on in the last video, is medication. Okay, it's drugs and medication. It was actually chemical compounds as well. So so we could also relate that to any convenience or fast food. Okay, so packaged foods, anything that has a shelf life or is pretty well packaged on a supermarket shelves. Okay, and so we want to, as much as possible, stay away from synthetic chemicals. They aren't produced inside the body, and so the body doesn't really recognize them as being helpful. They can suppress symptoms, and I've seen it happen. However, it can also, particularly as has happened to friends of mine in the past, particularly if you have had a journey of alternative therapies most of your life, and then you go down the road of medication, quite often what can happen is instant experience of it is, wow, my symptom has all but disappeared. However, then there's a very slow, although actually it is quite quick, progressive degeneration that then happens to the other functions of the body. And, I've seen people have heart attack within a month of starting to take conventional medication for a heart issue that had... I don't, this is why in alternative therapies, unfortunately, we have to write a disclaimer. Now, I've even come to the place where I don't really even like using the term alternative therapies. I certainly don't like using the term complementary therapies because I don't actually really believe that alternative therapies are particularly complementary to conventional medicine. And I'll tell you why. As far as I can tell, and I probably haven't experienced or even know about every alternative therapy that's on the market, but from all the ones that I have experienced and that I do know about and that I have trained in, basis of alternative therapies is essentially detox. Okay, the whole process is to encourage our system to soften and open so that whatever's stuck at the root cause, as opposed to the symptoms, can start to drop into the core of that. We're just creating almost like a ripple effect. It's very, very subtle, however, yet powerful. I mean, you could just think of something, for instance, like water torture could almost be an example, for instance. It starts off very, very subtle. However, when there is this constant kind of drip of information that you are feeding the body to soften and open, detox, relax, let go, and release, the body will start to open up more and more and more. Okay, so you'll start just with, very small, quite simple little shifts, little releases, and then those will start to build and grow and become huge let goes and releases and shifts and upgrades and downloads and all the rest of it. Okay, trust me, it's going to happen for you. So obviously, we don't want to put, alternative, synthetic chemicals inside our bodies. We want to use natural medicines, okay? They are really the conventional way that we have healed ourselves for the last several 100,000 years. Like I said, conventional medicine's only been around for 100 years. Come on. We know nothing about it. There may be some proof to suggest that it can encourage a little bit of longevity in a body that is completely stagnant, okay? However, if we just made the effort to educate from a very young age how to be well and full of ease, only reason that we would ever need the medical establishment would be for accidents and emergencies, and then they really are important. And then it would just start to, ease the system. Okay, so that's what I'm about. That's what I encourage, and that's what I want to see is education, education, education. Okay, so we can use herbs, we can use body therapies, we can use homeopathy, we can use batch flower remedies, we can use kinesiology, we can use talking therapies. There are so many different ways that we can encourage the body to begin to soften and open, release and let go. So the next one then was basically dairy, okay? And, a lot of people now, it's nothing new, a lot of people realising that veganism potentially is part of the journey to being really, really healthy and well, okay? Now, you may well think it's the only part of that journey, and I will allow you to believe whatever you want to believe, okay, at this stage in your journey, because you have to believe what you embrace, and you have to embrace what you believe, right? So believe it, embrace it, release it, detox, and really start to make huge inroads into sort of getting a sense of any damage, any inflammation, any impacted debris or plaque or cholesterol, mucus buildup, and really begin to have a sense of the internal workings of your body, okay? And I do very much recommend a vegan diet to kind of release all those mucus forming foods, and ideally releasing the inflammatory foods as well. Now, the problem that I have with a vegan diet is that it happens to often contain plenty of carbs, okay, and lots of sugar. So just because your vegan, organic, packaged in the free from aisle snacks are sort of very well PR'd, okay, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're any more healthy than your non-organic, snacks, okay? Because if they're packed full of sugar and wheat and yeast and, even dairy, sometimes these sort of organic chocolates and things like that are advertised as, then the likelihood is it is going to be causing inflammation, and then at some stage down the line, having done, plenty of detox, you may well find that there is a little bit of a health issue that you've uncovered. And a great way and a quick way to then begin to heal how we have caused damage to the fine linings of the viscera with little rips and tears is by using, again, then animal products, okay? And I'm not then suggesting to just go on a massacre of just eating loads of animals. We're not carnivores, okay? We are omnivores, and I actually believe that we are breatharian, ultimately, okay? So I'm never suggesting to anyone to just go on a rampage of eating loads of meat. However, it can begin to heal the gut in very simple and profound ways, actually. And if you've been told, if you do have an issue like colitis, diverticulitis, IBS, something like that, or it could even be like a heart issue, or, you've been to the doctors and they've said to you, don't eat fat, okay? And maybe you've been a vegan and, somebody suggested meat or, fat-based products. And, oh, no, I'm not supposed to eat fat. Come on, I've just got one word for you. Well, it's two, actually. Chicken soup. Now, I'm not suggesting you take the fattiest part of the broth by any stretch of the imagination, but get yourself a good organic chicken, boil up those bones, maybe sieve off some of the fat to save for later, and just ladle out some of the broth and even add it to water. You have got to start giving your body some good, healthy animal fats so that you can start to absorb them. But because you probably haven't had any for many years, and even possibly decades, your body might actually not know what to do with heavy fats at first. And yes, that could create a very ugly picture ultimately. So you need to start with very thin fats, very watery fats, and just really, really start to, get those fats inside you, but with thin soups. Okay, then you can start to add a little bit of meat, just a tiny bit. You don't need very much. We don't need a lot of meat. This is the beauty of using meat as medicine then to become breatharian, is because we don't actually need a lot of food. And one food that we can eat and we don't need a lot of is meat. And in my experience of experimenting with different food substances and things like that, and really looking at and experiencing and getting a sense of the addiction and the dopamine hit that we actually experience when we get that sort of, when we have a craving and we need to satiate it, we take a hit of whatever it is that we're addicted to, we're physiologically addicted to, and you can feel it once you really start to understand your body and you start to really break it down and and break through the fat, so that and really encourage the electrical impulses inside you in the nervous system, you will begin to become acutely aware of these various hormonal impacts, and dopamine is one of them. And the one thing that I came to learn is that where vegans, vegetarians and vegans have said, oh, once you start eating blood, you get the taste for it. You know what? It's not true. Meat isn't in the slightest bit addictive. If it is addictive, it's because of the salt and the seasoning that you put on it, as well as the gravies and, the sauces and the dew, the dew, that kind of thing. So meat, very simple, as raw as possible, or even well-cooked meat that isn't seasoned isn't in the slightest bit addictive. It doesn't give any kind of dopamine hit at all. So anyway, so that's dairy. There is goats. There is, I'm sure you can't go into a supermarket these days without noticing that there are about 50 different kinds of milks these days. So you can milk a hazelnut, an almond, a cashew, a pea, a peanut, soya beans, oats, and I'm sure there's and rice, and I feel that probably quinoa, and I have a feeling there are even more crazy types of milks out there. Sheep and goats, if you're looking for an animal, are both, I said more palatable. What I actually meant was less mucus forming on the body, so the body appreciates it more as a substantial food than it does dairy. Okay, so then we were talking about carbs and sugar. Okay, so carbs, breads, the real problem with bread and wheat these days is how it's been sprayed. The actual soil itself has been destroyed, has been damaged and destroyed, and so the all the goodness is actually locked up inside these hybridized grains. Okay, and really the only way that we can get the goodness of these grains is by soaking them overnight. So that includes oats, and that's what means that bread really is an indigestible food. And so we can improve on the bread picture. It's a very, very addictive food, okay? So it can be incredibly difficult to give up bread for a time. But there are ways that you can break the habit of the bread addiction. And once you have actually broken it, I recommend really stay away from it. You can, use a little bit of gluten-free bread. I do that from time to time. I definitely don't have it every day, but I will have it a couple of days a week, okay? Not sure that it necessarily does me any favors, but like I said, I'm still slightly in the addiction picture with just eating, okay? I'm not breatharian yet. So you want to be looking for a sourdough, a rye or a spelt in particular. You could go for gluten-free. You can get and ideally gluten-free sourdough. Okay, so there are a lot of gluten-free breads on the market there, but I would recommend staying away from yeast. Okay, so yeast is another biggie. We really need to stay away from it, and ideally go for a sourdough. You can also get things like gluten-free, crackers, stuff like that. But ultimately, we're kind of looking to remove that snacking, that kind of snack attack kind of energy out of ourselves anyway, if we're going to go towards immortality and breatharianism, okay? So you can make really wonderful raw crackers with flax seeds, and often they're tomato based. So I'm not great with nightshades anymore, and so I can't have those. But if you know how to make them, really wonderful, have at it. Sugar then is the biggie. okay, and it's the BIG. And there are so many alternatives, like I said in another video. I just don't even want to hear it anymore, okay? You can make your own snacks, make your own biscuits, you can make your own energy balls, you can make your own cacao chocolate, you can buy raw cacao in all sorts of flavors. So if you like it dark, if you like it 100%, if you like it milky, if you like it coconutty, if you like it flavored, mint, orange, coffee, lemon, oh my god, you know, they just do so many different kinds of raw chocolate these days. And you know, I'm completely addicted to it, absolutely love it. You know, gave it up for a month last year and wondered why. Honestly, I just wanted to do it because I wanted to see that I could do it, because I know that there is some caffeine in cacao, and so there is a slight addiction to it. And I just wanted to make sure I knew I can and could give up cacao, and I had given it up many years prior to that when I went vegan, because you couldn't eat chocolate back then, and it wasn't until 15 years down the line they brought out raw chocolate, and then I went, wow. So went on a whole nother cacao, and chocoholic journey therein. So coconut sugar, rice syrup, coconut syrup, agave syrup, molasses, so many different kinds of sugar. Well, there's erythritol these days, which is really a keto kind of sweetener. There's stevia. There are just so many. There are so many different kinds of sweeteners. Alcohol, like I said, just get rid. And there's nothing more I can tell you about that. I would suggest you just get yourself into really superfood juices. I've been starting to do that a little bit around, kind of have heard that the best COVID cure is quinine or hydroxychloroquine, and it's the active ingredient is quinine, which you can get in tonic water. So you could just spice up a juice with some tonic water, or boil up grapefruit peel. And then what I do is, because drink some of it, just if I'm feeling even just in the slightest bit run down, I just have a little bit of that. Bing! I tell you what, it just perks you up. It's so good. And then, so I'll drink some of it, then I will freeze the rest in ice cubes. And then I've been making really delicious drinks with things like pomegranate juice, one of the best defibrillators out there for the cell, and maybe a little bit of water kefir with some elderflower, and then a few quinine ice cubes, which then melt down, or some cherry juice, or, whatever you like. Just kind of mix it up a little bit, make it a bit kind of interesting, add some medicinal tinctures and things like that. And it has, you can give yourself that kind of interesting, sort of almost like non-alcoholic type of pick-me-up. And they're really great. And then, of course, tobacco. Okay, just don't bother. Honestly, I've got one word for you. Well, two: CBD and THC. Okay, that's all you need. Now, I just, I was going to say this on the last video and I didn't, and I'm just going to say it. Everyone I know that smokes tobacco is having the worst time in the world, okay? It is so tricky and sticky. It's so laced with chemicals. It takes you to a really, really dark place. And then usually, quite often, they're also smoking cannabis, and they've got the THC, and then that highlights the dark tar experience that they are having in their brain, in their head, stuck in like the worst kind of, dark vortex, a spiral of low self-esteem and low self-worth. And what they tend to do is they get rid of the THC and they keep the tobacco. Just don't do it. The reason that the tobacco doesn't bring it out is because it's further suppressing it. The alcohol won't either, but it will never get away from it. So if you are in an addiction story of smoking, okay, or tobacco, I suggest you just get yourself into a blunt and you just have one toke, okay? Don't overdo it. Whenever you need a hit of tobacco, of nicotine, you just have one hit of THC. It's going to take you on a slight journey and it's going to give you some information, but it isn't going to last very long at all, and you'll come out within several minutes, okay? If it were me, I would be supplementing like that, but I don't want to suggest anything to anyone. The other thing you can do is you can actually buy CBD to smoke. I definitely don't recommend a vape, a chemical vape, because I think they're absolutely the worst, and I think they're even worse than tobacco, and they create something that's called popcorn lung, okay? But if you are addicted to the inhalation, then I would recommend maybe getting something like a CBD or even a THC vaporizer, okay? Haven't tried them myself, but I'd quite like to, actually. I have considered getting something like a CBD vape just to sort of see what it's like so that I can recommend it to people. Okay, so those are the 5 biggies, and, get rid of them and give yourself... Oh, the one that I didn't say, which is in carbs, is potatoes. I absolutely can't eat potatoes anymore. Sweet potatoes, okay? Menopausal women, if you're coming up to that age, your body's going to thank you anyway, okay? So, going to leave it there. Plenty of information. And yeah, let's see what's next. Okay, come on.